I can't believe it, but it's already week. Jim McCormick wearing the brand. Meanwhile, I just recorded with London Fletcher, so I've got the wrong brand. But Jim, look at you all dressed up,
Ready.
sporting your Roto Curve stuff. And before we get to the quarterback picks for this week, because I think I'm going back to my normal strategy with quarterbacks, and I'm sure
Pan
you'll.
down.
Yeah, exactly. Last week hurt me deep inside spending up for a quarterback. It doesn't throw a touchdown. But before we get there, let's talk some Roto Curve. Uh, you can win free tickets for the big game 51, rotocurve.com/big game. You win the free tickets plus free fan experience events. If you go there, you can sign up and have a shot to do it. This includes a 4-night trip to Houston, Texas, 2 tickets to the big game February 5th. We all know and love that game. Upgraded lower level end zone seats, VIP tickets to that Antonio Brown celeb game, $800 airfare, all you can eat tailgate, which of course I would take advantage of like none other. Prime Sports Club pregame with Joe Montana and Warren Moon sounds pretty cool to me. Jim, what wasn't cool is Kobe
Yeah.
Fleener dropping a touchdown last week. Brandon Cooks getting stopped at the 1 where I didn't really think he was down. They didn't call it a touchdown. But, that's what you get. You spend up for quarterbacks. You need them to perform. If
Yep.
they don't, you've spent all your money there, and that can make it a long week. So do we learn from our mistakes this week? Who do you like at quarterback? I know for me, I'm spending down again.
Yeah, I'm spinning down. I don't like Breeze on the road here. I'm like if Breeze was home again, I might even go back to it just because that was like a low that was an outlier performance, right? I mean, it was the first time that's happened since 2009. But yeah, no, it is a measure of it's a smack in the face for the pay down crowd at quarterback, and it reminds you that spending up at skill positions is way often more rewarding, and it's a little bit about trusting the process over trusting results, right? Um, your process is to pay down at quarterback, and that generally rewards you. I think there were paths last week that we probably were blinded to by the fact that Breeze was this obvious guy. I think Andy Dalton would be the guy that I'm paying down for this week. The Browns are just that bad. I mean, being a Sixers fan, I can identify with the team intentionally losing, or to word it like strategically losing, giving itself really no opportunities to compete in this league. They've allowed a touchdown on a third of all drives since week 4. That's ridiculous. That's the highest in the league. They don't have a pass rush. They have the 4th lowest pass rush in the league. And the thing is, Andy Dalton operates well in a clean pocket. He really does. Last week, he had 134 passer rating when he had a clean pocket against the Eagles. He completed 5 of 6 passes, 20 yards or more when he had a clean pocket. So that's where we make our bones with fantasy quarterbacks, is those big chunk plays. I just think everything is in Cincinnati's favor here. They're kind of one of these teams who's due this kind of positive stretch. They're a better team, a better roster, even without AJ Green, without Gio Bernard. They're just like last year they were 3rd in the league in points per drive. Andy Dalton was 4th in the league in touchdowns per attempt. So there's some positive correction coming where his season still won't be. He's obviously not going to remind us of last year's elite numbers, but I do think this is a great bounce back spot. It's a great cash spot. He's not expensive. Even if people are on him, I think he gives you 20 fantasy points. And that's really all I want at that price point. Jameis Winston's also intriguing at home. You got to pay up a little bit more. I'm probably more on Dalton. But Winston's intriguing just because of the fact that the Saints also don't have a pass rush, and they also give up a lot of points. They give up the 4th most points per drive in the NFL. It's just a good situation, I think, for Winston. He's scored in every single game of his career. And not like that's the highest bar in the world, but I think in 7 straight, he scored at least 16 fantasy points as well on DraftKings. So that's a high enough floor, I think, to get into. It's just that I don't know what you think. I do wonder about the ceiling, but for cash, I don't mind the floor. I think he's around an 18-point floor here.
No, Winston's one of the guys I like. I'll start with him because you went there. There's 3 guys that I'm debating with for cash. And Winston's kind of the guy where last week I kind of think to myself, why wasn't I on Stafford instead against this bad defense?
Right.
And I mean, Winston against the Saints is a pretty much stone cold lock for me. You look at his numbers at home, he's failed to reach 20 fantasy points twice at home this year. And here are the defenses he faced. The Seahawks, he still scored 17, and the Denver Broncos, who are pretty much the toughest matchup for opposing quarterbacks, he still managed 13. So you can kind of throw those two out because we know the Saints are nowhere near that sort of stout defense. And I think Winston has a very good game at home. I think he's definitely up there. The guy who was standing out for me before I looked at the weather report was Tyrod Taylor against Pittsburgh at home. But now it looks like there's close to an 80% chance of snow. And if that's the case, I think I'm reserving him for tournaments. Even though, offense is in the snow, the running game is where it's at. But I worry that he could have like a Kaepernick game from last week where he can't complete a pass. Even though I do think, if it's snowing, he probably rushes for 70 yards and maybe
has to rush,
a touchdown.
Right? He's got three passing touchdowns since week 7. So
exactly. So the snow, may enhance it there, and who knows? Maybe we get a Jordan Howard performance. But I think in cash games, even at 5,400 on DraftKings, if the snow looks really bad, I can't do it. And the other option I like is Eli Manning, and I do see some downside to it, but I think that even though the Cowboys rank second in time of possession, and we're looking at a Giants team that ranks second to last. So there's clearly a scenario in which the Cowboys just dominate time of possession and the Giants barely have the ball. But even so, I think every time they do have the ball, they're going to have to throw it. I mean, I think they're either going to be playing from behind or playing in a close game in almost all scenarios. And therefore, I mean, Manning, who threw 3 touchdowns against them in week 1, is going to have to throw a lot. And a lot of the individual matchups I kind of like here. Dallas 27th in DVOA against the pass. Beckham's had some quiet games against them, but Sterling Shepard's been a guy who's been pretty consistent lately. I really like the matchup for Will Tye, even though he's not targeted that much. I just think there's a lot to like. I even like the matchup for Victor Cruz, I should say, out of the slot. He wasn't targeted last week, and it's kind of that squeaky wheel theory where he may get the ball. I just think Manning's going to have to throw a ton. That running game stinks. The Dallas run defense is good. So I think there's a pretty high floor here, and he's only 5,500 on DraftKings. So looking at cash game quarterbacks, I'm between those 3. If the weather's better than expected, weathermen don't always get it right. I'm probably going Tyrod. If it's not, I'm probably going Winston. But those are the cash game quarterbacks for me. Let's talk tournaments now. Who do you like in tournaments?
Well, one more cash guy. Put it this way, I might have cash and tournament lineups with this guy. It's Carson Palmer. He's actually looked a little bit better on tape here recently. His ball is moving a lot better. He's taking the same risk he was taking before, but the ball's getting there. And the thing that I like about it is Miami, is this a trend? I don't know, but Miami the last 2 weeks has given up historic. I mean, that was Colin Kaepernick's best regular season fantasy game of all time. And then last week was, I think, Joe Flacco's second best fantasy game of his career. So, these are pretty historic, upside outings to be giving up to guys who are well below the fringe of what we would consider, QB1s. So, Miami's pass rush has been strong this year, but their secondary is obviously, giving up, just free lanes, basically. I know I'm an Eagles fan. Byron Maxwell is not very good. Kiko Alonso is not good in coverage. They have a lot of breakdowns there. I think ever since I haven't actually done this, but I can go back and do this for next week. But I want to look at what their coverage allowance has been since Rashad Jones went down. He's a Pro Bowl safety, and ever since he's been gone, it seems like quarterbacks are picking over the middle a lot easier. So that's just something to look for. I think Carson Palmer's a guy who I like. I love his upside, and his price point on DraftKings is so reasonable. I mean, he's cheaper than Andy Dalton. And I'd argue, I don't think it's a tough argument. He's got a much better offense at his disposal. Especially just the fact that, you have David Johnson, who's over the last 4 weeks has 24. He's like doing a Le'Veon Bell thing where he's got 24% of their targets and can easily put together 100 yards on the ground and a touchdown. And then you add in whatever you can get out of and even it sounds crazy, not like Jermaine Gresham's a good player. I'm just saying it's another element that they actually have a tight end who's producing there. Those are some tournament guys that I like. And I'm actually not even afraid here because JPP's out. I'm not afraid of Dak Prescott. Again, it's his price point. On FanDuel, his price point isn't as reasonable. But again, on DraftKings, where I think their quarterback price is a lot more forgiving, $5,900 for Prescott. He's got the high floor, but he also has a ceiling, obviously. And I know he didn't play well in the debut against them, but I think the loss of Pierre-Paul is pretty big. It makes it kind of a one pass rush kind of team with Olivier Vernon. And I think if there's any team prepared to shut down one good pass rusher, it's this Dallas team. And also, this is kind of Dallas's playoff game. If they take care of the Giants here, this is narrative driven, but if they take care of the Giants here, their division is theirs and the NFC is theirs.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on a lot of those plays. I like a lot of them. I mean, Carson Palmer was definitely on my list. Dak Prescott was one who absolutely was on my list for some of the reasons I talked about in the Eli thing, where if they're dominating time of possession. I really like that matchup for Jason Witten. I think he's my pass-catching play on that team, even over Dez Bryant. I really think Dak could have a nice game. I mean, he scored 5 rushing touchdowns. The Giants defense hasn't really dealt with a bunch of guys who can run the football at the quarterback position, so I think that'll give him fits. And we have a 1-game sample from his first game, so I'm not really worried looking back that Prescott's worst game was against the Giants because it was his first game. I mean, he's definitely gotten better and more polished since then, so I don't think you can look at that. For tournaments, both quarterbacks from that Green Bay-Seattle game are intriguing to me. I do think Aaron Rodgers can beat this Seattle defense, and I do think that Russell Wilson is going to need to throw to beat this Green Bay team, especially on the road. So I like both those guys. I do think that one could turn into, a shootout type game. Like last week, we thought that Lions Saints game could, maybe not to the same degree. I mean, I was thinking that Saints offense could get to 50 points kind of thing, and I think this might be the first team to 30 wins this one. But I think they're both in play. Aaron Rodgers 6,400, so his price tag's down below Matt Ryan, which kind of makes it nice on DraftKings, and then Russell Wilson against this bad secondary that we've talked about so many times. I think you got to like that as well. I think Taylor, if the weather's bad, is a guy I will go to. And really the only other matchups I see for tournaments are Matt Ryan against LA, assuming Julio Jones is healthy. I don't think I want to go that route if he's not, with the likes of Taylor, Gabriel, Sanu, those guys leading the charge. I don't think I'm nearly as comfortable. Even if Julio Jones is active and just playing a decoy role, I feel a lot better about it. I don't know how you feel about him as a decoy, but yeah, but I think just his presence there, at least will have them focus a little more on him, and Ryan can just spread it around. And the other one I think you have to go with this week is I like both the quarterbacks in Baltimore, New England, specifically probably Brady. I mean, against this Baltimore team that first in DVOA against the run, first against tight ends, or at least up there, and bad against wide receivers. I mean, Brady's got this new guy, Malcolm Mitchell, who he seems to like. Don't forget about Julian Edelman. Don't forget about Chris Hogan. It just feels like one of those games where he's going to use the backs out of the backfield just because you strategize against a defense like this, and passing is the way to beat him. It just seems like a game where Brady could throw 45 plus times. And if you're going to spend up a quarterback, the way to do it is in tournaments. I think Brady's got the most upside of any quarterback, so he's a guy I'd be fine with. And then, if Baltimore's got to play catch up, they're not afraid to throw the ball 40 plus times. Flacco does very often, so I like it there. Do we miss anyone in GPPs this week?
No, I think that covered it. I'm a little gun shy on Stafford. I wonder if this is a game that they don't need to push up the points, that they can dominate without needing that. And the price point is high enough for him now that we kind of need that 303 kind of return. So I think the more and more I look at it, and the more and more that this Miami team is seeming kind of a little bit like fool's gold. I think here's the thing with Miami. The second they were stopped, they weren't able to run, and they weren't able to get all that yards before contact. It affected how they could pass. And then the last week, for example, during their 6-game winning streak, Tannehill had 1 interception. Well, he had 3 interceptions last week against the Ravens, who are one of the best rush defenses in the league. Well, the Cardinals give up the least amount of yards per rush. They give up 3.35 yards per rush and the fewest yards before contact. And I say that because I do think game flow-wise and game script-wise that the Cardinals can kind of tilt it in their favor, in the sense that they could make Tannehill play like, week 1 through week 5 Tannehill, where the game's in his hands, especially if there's bad down and distances. So I think there's a lot. I just think there's a number of trends here that point to Carson Palmer being a really nice tournament play.
Yeah, and we'll get to. I like certain plays in that Lions game. Actually, one specifically, but
Yeah,
I don't think Stafford as a whole is the one I want to go to.
I don't either. I think they can win that game without without like needing the volume. Like he's actually had a lot of quiet games where they don't in those like he doesn't if he doesn't they don't need to get into a shootout. I don't think they're going to engage with one.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. All right. Well, that is all for us for quarterbacks this week. Before we go, again, just want to reiterate rotocurve.com/big-game, rotocurve.com/big game. You can win free tickets and fan experience plus fan experience events to the Big Game 51 that's coming up in Houston, Texas, February 2nd to the 6th. All kinds of good stuff included. $800 airfare credit, VIP tickets, the Antonio Brown celebrity game, all you can eat tailgate, all that good stuff. So make sure you check it out. That is all for us. Stay tuned as Jim and I will be talking running backs and just about everything else this week coming up.